I know that above all you're a student of film. So my first question is, when did your awareness of Polanski's work begin for you?
Oh, God. I mean, I can't even remember, but it was definitely around, I mean, I was 16 when I went to NYU Film School. So I think Rosemary's Baby was probably the first, and Chinatown. I can't remember which order. And then once I was in film school, then I started to discover Cul-de-sac and Le Locataire, which is, The Tenant, and his earlier work. But, I've been a fan of his since I can remember, loving movies. Yeah, but my favorite, if you ask me what my favorite film of his, I think my favorite film is The Tenant. Is by far the Tenant, yeah. And I've seen that on the big screen maybe at least 5 times on the big screen.
It's interesting that you mentioned The Tenant, because I recall seeing Rosemary's Baby and just being completely terrified by it as a teenager. But my most vivid first memory of Polanski's work was seeing the trailer for The Tenant, and it has always been my all-time favorite trailer because the
trailer is brilliant, but it's also the poster is haunting and it's brilliant.
It is.
And when you go back and look at Repulsion and you look at all his other movies, you're like, wow, I think that's what makes Roman the great director that he is that when you see his film, you don't have to see literally directed by Roman Polanski. It's a Roman Polanski film.
That's right.
And I think that Roman's personality and his optimism, I would say, exists in his work. Roman is an incredibly optimistic individual, and his positivity kind of is in those movies and his life experiences. But if you ask him if any of these, I asked him personally, I said, is Chinatown a personal film? Because I love the movie. Obviously, it's one of the greatest movies ever made, but what in it is personal to you? He says, that isn't personal, Brett. I needed a job. So he said the only personal film he's ever really made is The Pianist.
Not only, obviously, are you a student of Polanski's work, but you're close friends with him as well.
Yeah.
So how did that start? How did that relationship begin?
I think it was Jeff Berg. I had done the first Rush Hour, and I think Jeff Berg had a conversation with Roman, and Roman had told him how much he had loved Rush Hour, the first Rush Hour, and I was so surprised, because I was always kind of envious of guys like Paul Thomas Anderson in a positive way. So happy for him. Paul was friendly with Jonathan Demme, and he was on the set of Kubrick's movie because he was going to work with Tom Cruise. Because I admire filmmakers. It's like the biggest star in the world could be sitting next to me in a restaurant, and if there's a director, on the other side, I'm going to spend my whole time talking to the director because I just admire and love filmmakers. I was always envious of Paul because Paul had these incredible relationships with these great filmmakers, and I thought, well, one day I'm going to have to do an important film, that I'm going to get the respect and I'm going to become friends with these guys that I always admired and looked up to. And when I did Rush Hour, I got 3 calls, and one was from Demme, Jonathan Demme, who told me how much he loved Rush Hour. The other one was Warren Beatty.
Yeah, he loved that film.
Yeah, and the third person who Jeff Berg introduced me to was Roman, and we had the most incredible conversation. And he said to me, "Well, are you ever in Paris?" I said, "Yeah, I come to Paris, but meanwhile, I never come to Paris." And he said, "Well, when you're in Paris, look me up. And I said, great. And so like 3 weeks later, I booked a ticket. And I'll never forget this because I checked in alone to this hotel called the Royal Monceau. I checked into this hotel, and I was so excited. I was nervous. I called his office and left a message with his secretary because he wasn't around. And she said she'll give him the message. I said, please tell him I'm at the Royal Monceau. I'm in town for a few days. And he left a message, and I wasn't going to leave my hotel room because I was so nervous to miss him, but I knew my mom would have killed me if I went to Paris and didn't go see the Louvre or go see the Eiffel Tower, So I went on a walking around Paris, and when I got back to the hotel, there was those little, in Paris in the hotels, they leave you like a little piece of paper with a handwritten note, and it said, and I actually framed it when I got it, it said, Mr. Polanski called, please meet him at Chez Andre at noon.
Wow.
And so I went to the concierge and said, is there any poster stores around here, French poster stores? And I said, yes. So I went down to the poster store like at 9 in the morning, waited for it to open, and got every single Polanski poster I could find. And what was incredible was, though, and what unfortunate at the same time, was that the posters in Paris, I don't know if you know, they're like 6 sheets. They're like gigantic, right?
True.
And the restaurant I went to meet him in, the table was like the size of like a kid's desk in a preschool. They're like these tiny little tables. And I said, look, I saw him and I said, hi, great to meet you. I said, listen, I don't know if I'm ever going to meet you again. So can you sign these posters for me? And I just started opening up these posters. And I said, well, what do you want me? I said, what do you want me to write? I said, to your favorite director, Brett. To your good friend, Brett. And I literally spent all day with him just picking brain and asking questions. And I'll remember I told him, I said, there was a scene he was asking me all these questions about Rush Hour and how did you do this and how much he loved the pace and the composition of the shots and the way the film was put together. And he said, and I was so surprised only because I realized at that moment that directors aren't snobs, meaning they're not like critics. Directors love a good film no matter what the genre was, where a movie like Rush Hour is kind of looked down upon as critics as kind of as a pop movie, where a filmmaker like Roman, who is as credible as it gets, as a fan of movies as much as any critic, loved the movie and loved the way and appreciated how well it was made. So, not to blow smoke up my own butt, but I just realized at that moment that I'm never going to really care what a critic ever says, because this is all I need. The fact that Roman Polanski likes Rush Hour, I don't care what any critic ever says about those movies. And so we had a great time that day, and we exchanged numbers, and we literally just kept in touch. And he invited me to the set of I'll never forget, to the Oliver Twist movie he did. And I flew to Prague, and that's where I met Pavel Edelman, who shot The Pianist and who shot that movie for him and who's shooting Roman's current movie. And he came to New York for me and shot a segment of New York, I Love You. I've never worked with such a brilliant cinematographer. I mean, Dante shot my movies, and Dante is unbelievable. But Pavel, just has an incredible sensibility and sensitivity, and his exposures and everything were just so unbelievable. I mean, I put him nose to nose with Dante Spinoni.
I'm wondering, you had to have had some preconceived notions about what you would find with Polanski when you finally met him. How did he surprise you when you met him?
Well, he surprised me because of his enthusiasm and love of movies. I didn't know he wasn't going to be that guy, but because of the life that he's had and just the tragedy, you expect maybe a guy who can
very morose.
Yeah, maybe morose, and he is the most positive, the most happiest, the most outgoing, most fun human being I've ever met. He doesn't carry his tragedy on his shoulder.
No.
He doesn't wear it like an albatross around his neck. He really is a guy who is a perfect example of humanity, of just the human spirit, of a guy who has overcome. I mean, he really is inspiring to me, not only as a filmmaker, but as a father. He's an unbelievable father. He's an unbelievable man. He's just a guy who really shows me that, there's ups and downs in life, and that, a human being can overcome tragedy in their life and still make a great life for themselves. So, at the same time that he has some dark themes in his movies, and he's not cynical or tries to over intellectualize it. We laugh about like his movies and what people say about them, the deeper meaning that they look at into his films, and it's funny of his point of view. And he was just like, he's trying to tell a great story, and whether it comes out to be great or whatever the deeper meaning people find, that's okay. But it's kind of, I think he finds it humorous that people believe that he intellectualizes it. He's a guy who always says, and I feel the same way in the way I work as a filmmaker. He always says, Brett, I use my eye and instincts.
Right.
I don't use my brain as much as I do my eye and my instincts. Not to say that his movies aren't smart, but he's an incredibly intelligent person, and he's a born storyteller. So I got to tell you a great story. So we had this friendship, and I was offered to be the president of the jury of the Camera Image Film Festival in Poland, which is in Łódź, Poland. And when I was at NYU Film School, I had a Polish film professor by the name of Milek Knebel. And he told me that if I wanted to be a great director, I had to go to the film school in Łódź, Poland, which is where Roman went. And I said, okay, well, sign me up. I'm ready to move to Poland. You know, I was in NYU. I was in film school. He says, okay, but first you have to take 6 months of Polish. And I was like, why don't you teach me what they teach you in that school, because you're from that school. So I didn't end up going, and then 20 years later, I'm invited to be the president of the jury of this cinematography film festival, which is the most prestigious film festival for cinematographers in Poland, in Łódź, in the town. And I call Rome and I say, guess where I'm going? To Łódź. He goes, what do you mean you're going to Łódź? I said, he said, I went to film school there. I said, I know. He said, well, I'm going to be the president of this jury there. And he said, I'm coming to meet you. So to my surprise, Roman flew from Paris to Warsaw and then drove, I don't know if it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, to Łódź. Met me in Łódź on the last day of the film festival and took me to his film school that he hadn't been in probably over 30 years, and took me into this classroom, which was a screening room, and showed me all of his student films.
Wow.
And that was the most incredible experience, I mean, really, of my life. I mean, and then we left there, and we went to Poland. We went to Auschwitz. He took me to, we went to Auschwitz. We were in Poland. We went to Auschwitz, and he showed me where his mother was murdered in Auschwitz, and it was an incredibly emotional trip. And I actually took pictures of it for He magazine. It wasn't for He, but I took pictures and I gave them to He magazine. And I took Alan Hughes with me, who's one of the Hughes brothers, who's a big fan of Romans, and we all all hang out, the three of us. And then we went to Krakow, and he showed me where he was born, his grandmother's house and his house. So it was great. It was such a great experience, and it was educational. It was definitely an emotional journey. But for me, it was an experience that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I actually videotaped it, but I put videotapes in the vault because I'll never let that out. But just such a great experience for me.
Let me ask you about, because you mentioned that you've been invited to his sets to watch him work on Oliver Twist and The Ghost, his latest one. Yeah. What do you take from him? What do you learn from him observing him in working mode?
Oh my God. I went on the set of The Ghost in Berlin. I was in Berlin. I went to visit him on the set of The Ghost. I was there. I was only there for a day, and he was. God, he's like I said, when you see his short films, he was born to do this. This guy was born to do this. And I think from our generation, of course, there's great directors that go back, but for me, there's Kubrick, and there's Polanski, and everyone else kind of falls under that. And Roman is still alive. So of the living directors, he's, I think, the greatest of the living directors, and like I said, what he does which makes him who he is he has an unbelievable point of view. He knows what he wants, and he is a great actor, and that's why I love director acting in movies. When John Huston was in Chinatown, the Prep Rush Hour 3, and we were having lunch.
Okay.
And I was telling him about the movie, and I said, as a joke, I'm always saying, and I said, Roman, you should be in the film. And he goes, well, what would I do? I'm in New York City. That's why there's sirens everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. And so they said, well, what would I do? And I said, wait right here. And I go to the bathroom, and I call my writer, Jeff Nathanson, who wrote Catch Me If You Can and wrote all the Rush Hour movies. And I said, Jeff, you got to write a scene for Roman Polanski. He goes, Roman Polanski is not acting in Rush Hour 3. I said, I swear he's going to do it. Just write a scene. And I said, fax it over to the hotel. So we finished lunch, and by the time we walked to the hotel, the concierge says, Monsieur Ratner, I have a fax for you. And I hand Roman the script. I don't even read it because I know Jeff's a great writer. And he writes a scene as a cop that welcomes Chris and Jackie when he arrives in Paris. And he said, I'm in. And I was like, oh, my God. I was so excited. And one day Roman calls me, and he's so meticulous about his character, about his hair, his mustache, his wardrobe, you know, the way that the badge, the details on the props that he uses. That attention to detail is what makes him one of the greats.
Yeah.
That's what separates the wheat from the chaff. When you ask me, the way he works is his attention to detail is unbelievable.
Right.
And even as an actor, he does that. His process, his method. The greatest day of my life, aside from the day that I met him, was when he calls me up and he says, "Can I see you?" He's going to say, "Oh, I changed my mind. I'm not going to do the movie." And he says, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at the Plaza Athénée." He said, "I'll meet you in the lobby." Meets me in the lobby, and he says, "Can we rehearse?" And I'm like, "Oh, right here?" He goes, "Yeah." So I'm sitting there running lines with Roman Polanski, and I'm saying to myself, can someone see me right now? I'm running lines with Roman Polanski. And I'm the director.
Yeah, that's got to be awesome.
And I'm the director. So it was so cool. It was so cool.
He's such an amazing talent, obviously, and we talk endlessly in these interviews we've done the past week about his strength of composition and his framing.
That's what it's all about, I think. I mean, you know, obviously he's so great with actors. He's so great with, you know, and his secret is also something that and not that it's a secret, but it's something that I do as well, is he hires the best people in the world. If you look at the editors he worked with and the cinematographers, I mean, they were the best in the world, really. And his composition to me is the thing that blows me away. His sense of the frame. His sense of the frame. And he has this Tiwi viewfinder, which is this old school viewfinder that they don't make anymore. They haven't made it probably in 30 years. It's like the coolest thing ever that he wears around his neck. I found one on the internet and I bought it. It's like, you know, the coolest thing ever. But it's that shot in Rosemary's Baby. I mean, every shot. There's not a shot that doesn't punch you in the face in one of his movies. There's not a shot that doesn't have importance. He's not over-covering anything. He's not showing off. It's always to serve the story. Every frame serves the story, and there's not a wasted frame in his movies.
And it sounds like an obvious statement, but film is a visual medium, and if you turn the volume down in his films, you can follow them perfectly through the visuals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, incredible.
That's true. A knife in the water, I always found.
Yeah.
Well, even in his student films, I'll tell you have to see them, and they are brilliant. I think on on the cul-de-sac DVD, you could see all his shorts. I think for the Criterion Collection, and I just watched the new release that Criterion just put out of Repulsion.
Yeah, I just bought that on Blu-ray,
and it's incredible. The behind the scenes, I mean, stuff and the making of is like some of the greatest stuff I've ever seen, and his commentary and his interviews about the movie, about the making of the movie, I mean, and why he made certain choices, and why, you know, he would say certain. I love that there were some shots that he said, look, if I was doing that today, I would never do that. It was too pretentious, or too, I don't know the words he would use, but he was always still kind of, you know, he doesn't consider his work, and that's what it is. He doesn't think of it as a masterpiece, but even though it is, he sees the flaws in it. He sees how he could have done better. There's a shot of Catherine Deneuve that was sitting in the park in the distance, and it was too far, the lens. So the one lesson he taught me is about distance. And I saw that in Repulsion, he points out, I don't know if it was in the commentary or he was talking about the scene where Catherine Deneuve was too far, and there was a big car that passed through the frame, and everyone's eye went to the car, and I could see why he was giving me that whole speech when I first met him the first day. I said, what advice you could tell me? I was saying, tell me something, because he kept asking me questions, and I'm like, but you're Roman Polanski, you got to give me something. And he's like, remember the distance. Forget about the lens you use. The distance between you, the camera, and the subject. And we work very similarly, where I let the actors block and let them go with their instincts, and then I stand where I want the camera to be. And that's, I think, his approach, and I did that as well without knowing that he did that, but that's how I kind of figure out where I want to start a scene. And when we were together in Paris the first time, I said I had a tough time in this one scene figuring out where to start the scene. I think that's sometimes the hardest thing. And it was like sitting there trying to figure out a math test with a calculator sitting with him, because I drew it. He said, okay, who's in the scene and where are they standing? And then he showed me where he would put the camera, which is the complete different place where I would have put it, where I did put it. And then he asked me, well, where did you put the camera? And he gave me so much confidence, because he said, you see, that's totally personal. Mm-hmm. There's no right or wrong here. Yeah. It's just really about personal taste.
Right.
And that's the thing about Roman, is that he has the best taste of any filmmaker I've ever seen, because his choices are so smart and so specific and so thought out. It's not random.
What do you think his legacy is?
Well, his legacy is his body of work. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if it's one movie. It's not one. I mean, there are so many great films that he's made, and so many people love so many different movies. One person will say Repulsion is their favorite. One person will say Rosemary's Baby. Another person will say Chinatown. So everybody has their different opinion. I think the legacy is his body of work.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the documentary Wanted and Desired.
It's a great documentary.
Yeah. So Marina, Roman had nothing to do with that movie. He didn't even see the movie. I actually saw the movie. We had a screening. Marina screened the movie at my house, and I invited Roman's friends like Bob Evans and Warren Beatty. I think Bob Town was there. I don't remember, but a bunch of his friends came to see the movie before Roman even saw it, and because he didn't really want to sway anyone's opinion, he wanted it to be an honest depiction of what happened. And I think Marina did a brilliant job. So now Marina's asked me to produce the sequel to Wanted and Desired, because so much has happened because of that film.
Yeah.
And now probably the case is going to go to the Supreme Court, and so much is going to happen now. And so I am so lucky, and I think Marina is such a brilliant filmmaker. She won an Emmy for Best Director and I think Best Writer, but she did a brilliant job, and I'm lucky to be working with her. So I'm producing the sequel to Wanted and Desired.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, that's great news. That's wonderful.
Now Roman will be a part of it. I mean, I think now because now it's really more about the outcome of what's happened since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Roman has agreed to participate.
It seems to me that he would probably choose to stay at the place where he's made his home in France, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really get into those details. I mean, he has a great life. He's a great family. I think to clear I think for peace of mind, I think this case has just been going on too long, and it's just ridiculous, and the injustice of the judicial system is so obvious in Marina's film. So I don't think it's about a desire to come back to the United States. I think it's more about peace of mind for him, and I think that's something that I think he deserves, and I think the family's forgiven him, the girl, the victim, forgiven him. Yeah. The rest of the world should forgive him. It's not his business. And the L.A. judicial system is corrupt. It's horrible. And so this is I think for him, I think I would love to see that happen for just his peace of mind. It would be great.
Before I let you go, can I just? I've been waiting 2 years to relay this message to you. We had Judge Reinhold on the show like a year and a half ago.
So
he went on for 10 minutes about where he'd like to, if his character Billy is a part of the fourth Beverly Hills Cop, where he'd like to see Billy going. Is he a part of Beverly Hills Cop 4, the Billy character?
There's been a few variations of it. I mean, I would love him to be a part of it, and I think so would Eddie. So yeah, we're trying to figure that out. I actually called him, and he never called me back, which is weird.
Maybe
I called the wrong number, but I would love to hear his idea. I mean, I know Eddie's open to it, and so am I. If it happens, it depends on, when you're writing a script, there's rewrites, there's ideas, there's changes, there's variations. But yeah, I would love to work with him. I think he's as much a part of the Beverly Hills Cop legacy as Eddie is. So it would be great, and he's a great actor.
Mm-hmm. I will send you the audio I'll send your people the audio of what he said.
Will you send it to me? That would be great.
Yeah, we will, definitely.
I would love to hear it, and I'll play it for Eddie, too. thanks, for this tribute. I think it's important, for people to support, great films and great filmmakers. And I think you guys are obviously fans of movies. And I just think that Roman is just one of the greats. And he deserves all the respect and adulation that he receives. And I'm lucky just to know him and honored to be his friend. But the truth is, I'm more of a fan. I'm just his biggest fan.
Right.
And he dispels all. I mean, when I meet a director and a director starts acting like a snob or an asshole or something, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, Roman is the most down to earth, the most friendly, the most real, the most, and at the same time the most respected,
Mm-hmm.
And so why act like an asshole when he's the poster child for the a nice person. He's just There's nothing pretentious about him. There's nothing. He's so down to earth and such a great person that when I meet somebody who has a lot of success and they start acting like they're important or they have self-importance, I get so turned off, because when you meet a guy like Roman who could act that way if he wanted to, he's just a regular guy, really, who just loves movies as much or more than any person I've ever met. It's not just that he's a filmmaker. He loves films. I got him the Janus collection for a present, and he, his daughter told me that he watches it like every night. He puts in one of those movies, one of those classic films, and he watches it because he loves films. And I think that's what our relationship. You say, what the hell is Brett Ratner and Roman Polanski doing as friends? But the thing is, we both have a love and a passion for movies, and I think that's what our connection is. I think, and I have a love and admiration for legends, for old guys, because I'm going to learn from these guys. These guys have been through it. They've experienced it, and I want to learn from them, and that's why I seek these people out, and I try to cultivate my relationships with them and stay in touch with them, because I love hearing their stories, and they love to tell their stories.